And we're kicking off this list with Anita, the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. Anita is a high-tech balloon-type object used by NASA hovering over Antarctica. It was designed to track particles that are the result of collisions with high-energy neutrinos, which enter into our atmosphere from deep within space. Just a few years back, though, Anita discovered something kinda strange. It detected neutrinos that a group of scientists suggested could be a glimpse into a parallel universe. The strangeness comes from the fact that these particular neutrinos seem to come from below the Earth's surface instead of from space, like all the other neutrinos the device was designed to pick up. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know this. I am not a scientist. However, the consensus amongst scientists is that this was pretty odd. This led to some hypothesizing that maybe these particles were slipping into our world from a parallel universe, where the rules of how things work might be completely opposite. Researchers have pondered that this potential parallel universe might be running time backwards. Imagine events unfolding in reverse, like rewinding a movie. So instead of coming from out there, they're coming from up there. Now, this is just speculative, but it's a possibility, and that's pretty cool. At number 9, we have a really cool story posted to Reddit by user udominate123. It seems like two parallel universes may have crossed over here. That's one possible explanation anyway, unless this is all just an amazing coincidence or, you know, just isn't true. Anyways, it goes like this. My company was located inside a large business park, and there were walking paths that wound through buildings, crossed roads, and spanned the entire park. Every day during my lunch break, I would take a walk on those paths to get a little exercise. One day, I was walking. I noticed a car driving towards me that was the exact same color and model as mine, which isn't too odd in itself, except my car had a very unique vanity plate on the front that this car also happened to have. As the car got closer, I noticed it had a VIP pass from an event I recently went to hanging from the rear view mirror, the same as my car. I watched very closely as it drove by, and I saw myself driving, clear as day, wearing the exact same shirt I was wearing at the time, the same glasses. Since the car was inside the business park, it was moving no more than 15 miles per hour, so I got a very good look. The person driving looked forward the whole time, so they didn't appear to see me. It drove around a corner and was gone. I tried looking in the lots of the buildings where it was driving towards, but I didn't find any of them. My car was in the exact same spot I left it, unmoved. Next on the list, we have the man from Torrid. Now, this story has reached urban legend status at this point, but it's still a fascinating tale. The year is 1954, and Tokyo's Haneda Airport is buzzing with activity. In walks this dude, but when the customs folks asked where he's from, he drops a bombshell. Torrid is his answer. Now, wait a minute. You're probably thinking, like, well, where the heck is Torrid? What is that? Well, according to this mystery man, he pointed it out on a map, Torrid is exactly where Andorra is. Customs officers scratched their heads as the man became increasingly frustrated, never having heard of Andorra before. Torrid? Nowhere to be found though. So authorities stick him in a hotel room, guards stationed outside, but come morning, the guy has completely vanished. And not only that, but his passport and personal documents that were in custody were also nowhere to be found all of a sudden. So the idea here is that this guy slipped into our world from a parallel universe just for a short time, a glitch in the matrix, if you will, and hopefully he woke up the next morning in his own universe and got to head back home to Torrid and tell his version of events. Maybe there's another version of me shooting a video exactly like this right now, talking about the strange Japanese airport that didn't know where Torrid was, pointing out a mysterious place called Andorra on the map instead. Number 7, Deja Vu. Not gonna spend a lot of time on this one because you all know what it is and it's been talked about to death. But it is one of those phenomena that scientists have yet to definitively explain. There are only hypotheses, and that's pretty interesting, especially seeing as this is an incredibly common occurrence. You'd think, like, with how often this happens to everybody, that they'd have, like, cracked the code by now. Never gets old either. Like, every time deja vu hits me, it's just as magical as it was the first time, and I always have to announce it. Like, no matter where I am or how inappropriate it may be, I gotta be like, hey, I just had deja vu! Vu! Sorry, go on. Continue lowering the casket. I don't know, I just can't help it. It's so darn cool. Let me know some of your weirdest deja vu stories down below. I'm fascinated. Number 6, the wow signal. The wow signal is a mysterious radio signal picked up in 1977 by an Ohio State University radio telescope, lasting just 72 seconds. It's called the wow signal due to the astronomer Jerry R. Iman's scribbled exclamation on the data printout. The signal's frequency and intensity were unlike any known natural source, sparking speculation about its origin. Now, the most exciting theory is that it could have been extraterrestrial in origin, but some have even suggested it might have come from a parallel universe. The strange signal has only ever been captured one time, so perhaps whatever created this signal dipped into a black hole somewhere and is in a completely different universe now. But more dull explanations like passing comet or space debris have also not been ruled out, so it is definitely no definitive proof or anything, but pretty interesting all the same. It's worth checking out the recording too. Pretty spooky sounding. Number 5, the Mandela effect. This is another one that's just like with deja vu, gets talked about a lot, so I won't bore you with it for too long, but it's fun to talk about. The Mandela effect is when a lot of people remember something one way, turns out to be different. People think they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, but he actually didn't. Some think it's because of parallel universes where different versions of reality exist at the same time, and the idea is that our memories might be crossing over from these other universes, causing this kind of confusion, a jumbled mess. There's a bunch of parallel worlds, each slightly different. Sometimes things just get jumbled up and we remember stuff from a different world. Now, that's just one possible explanation for this phenomena. Some say it's just how our brains work. Our memories are not the most reliable, and for whatever reason, there are certain things our brains collectively seem to picture one way and it just doesn't turn out to be the case. Really depends on which Mandela effect you're talking about, I guess. There are tons of different ones. Regardless though, it's another bizarre occurrence without a definitive scientific explanation. I still say my favorite one is the Pikachu's tail having like black on the end. That's one I seriously, everyone tells me, oh, when I was a kid I had a Pikachu doll with like a black, his tail was black on the end. I could swear. You can never find pictures of it unless it's like a, I don't know, unless someone just made one. I don't know. Anyway. Next up we have ghosts. Now this one is pretty kooky, but ghosts don't come up much when the subject of parallel universes are brought up, so I just thought to change things up, I'd throw them in here. Now, ghost stories are not really taken seriously by the scientific community, which is fair enough. There's really no evidence that proves these types of stories to be legitimate, but at the same time, there's not really any definitive way to disprove ghosts outright either. It's kind of an unfalsifiable thing, and again, that doesn't mean they do exist, but it is possible. Unlikely, but possible. So, do ghosts exist in an alternate dimension adjacent to our own, which crosses over from time to time? Are they stuck in some sort of dimension where time doesn't move forward like it does here, and they're just trapped in a never-ending loop, appearing the same way they did before they died? Is that what happens when we die? That's a pretty terrifying idea. And number 3, we have unexplained disappearances. Unexplained disappearances happen all the time. We talk about a lot of them on this channel. People who go out one day, never to be seen again, just gone without a trace. Now, obviously, the most likely explanation here is foul play. Someone grabbed them and is just very good at concealing evidence. But is that the explanation for every one of these cases? Maybe not. It's just people have been known to disappear without a trace either. It's everyday objects too. So, are there small pockets of space that lead to parallel universes that these people or things just happen to fall into occasionally? I told a story about a month back about a pillow I had that just vanished from the couch and then reappeared months later. Like, stuff like this happens. It's incredibly weird. Check out my top 10 evil entities people encountered in apartment blocks video for that full story, by the way. Next up, we have a story posted to Reddit by user Julia Keck, and she describes an experience that, if true, could possibly point to a parallel universe brushing up against our own for a brief moment. She writes, "When I wake up, the first thing I do is get on my computer, and so I did that one morning. I decided I'd check my subscription feed on YouTube, and the first video that showed up was just some mundane story time type of video. Unfortunately, I don't really remember what it was or the author anymore. I don't usually watch this type of stuff, but for some odd reason, I had an urge to click on it and see what it was, and So I did. I watched a few seconds of the video unamused and then suddenly got a huge feeling of deja vu. I felt like I'd watched the video before, but the weirdest thing is I started reciting it. I knew every word said in the video. Why the F would I know it? I don't remember things so clearly when I have deja vu. I freaked out because watching this video before was impossible, as it was uploaded 20 minutes before I watched it. I even checked if this was some sort of re-upload or remake, but it wasn't. And that's gonna bring us to our final point here. We have the phone call. This one was also posted to Reddit by user Torby Lilies. The story goes as follows. I was at work when my dad called my phone. I was worried that something was wrong because a few minutes earlier I had called him and he couldn't make out what I was saying, but he knew it was my voice and I sounded agitated. All he could make out were a couple of times where I used some of the nonsense nicknames I use for my parents' pets, so he thought something had happened to the dogs. I told him I hadn't called him, but he didn't believe me and thought I was pulling a prank. Later on, when I saw him in person, I showed him that the last outgoing call I had made to him had been about 5 days before, but he had definitely been called by my phone earlier that day because his phone showed an incoming call from my number and the call had gone on for about 3 minutes before it cut off. So, I mean, this would freak the hell out of me, right? It's the fact that whoever this mystery caller is sounded exactly like them, according to their father, and that they knew the names of their dogs. Was this a parallel version of this Reddit user who found themselves in another universe and tried calling their father in a panic, not knowing what was going on? Or had someone managed to hack their phone and knew exactly how to impersonate their voice and knew the names of their pets?
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have a little bit different. One morning in 2008, Lorena woke up in a life that was similar to the one she was living when she went to sleep, but was certainly not the same. At first it was just things like her bed sheets and pajamas, but when she got to work, things began to escalate. Lorena realized that her office wasn't her office and that she worked in the same building, but in a completely different department. She had never even met her boss before, so she knew this couldn't have been a moment where she just got lost or confused. When she returned home after the workday, she was met by her ex-boyfriend, only to find that he was apparently her current boyfriend. She tried to find the person that she had been dating for months, but he didn't even seem to exist in this new life and world that she now found herself in. Lorena began to seek psychiatric help because she was fearing she was having some sort of nervous breakdown, but all tests revealed that she seemed to be of sound body and mind. The strange occurrences continued when Lorena asked her family how her sister was doing. Lorena knew that her sister had recently had shoulder surgery and wanted to check in, but when she asked her family, they were baffled by her claims and insisted that there was no surgery that had taken place on anyone in the family. Lorena couldn't find any answers to her situation and was having no luck with a medical explanation either. She was convinced that she went to sleep one night and woke up in a parallel universe that was altered slightly by small decisions that she had made. Honestly, I can't really think of anything else that would cause all of these strange occurrences to happen all at once. In our number 9 spot today, we have the dream. This story starts off with the person explaining that a couple times a month when they dream, they head off to another parallel universe. They say that while in this universe, they are either in their hometown or are in Dallas, Texas. I'm not sure why, but it's their journey, not mine. They then go on to say that while they know these cities and know where everything is, something about them is just off. Like they're really run-down versions of what they're like here in this universe. The houses and businesses are run down, paint is peeling off the walls, it just generally looks like an abandoned city even though it's occupied. So this one particular dream is what got them really confused about this alternate reality. Basically in this dream they were living in this one house. They didn't live there in their awake reality and they had never been there before, but in this particular dream this is where they lived. They noticed that their house was the only one on the block that had a rear garage. In the end, since they were in this rundown version of the city, they ended up coming into conflict with some bad people who were there and they found themselves in this alternate reality getting shot. They then woke up with a really bad headache, they took some Advil and decided to look up the house that they had lived in this dream. When they did, they found that not not only was it a real place, but that in this awake reality, it was also the only house on the block that had a rear garage. What do you guys think? Is this just a weird coincidence, or are their dreams taking them to an actual different reality? In our number 8 spot today, we have the doppelganger. This story comes from someone who swears that they saw themselves, like, as if they were another person walking past. They wrote, quote, "I'm from a very dry, hot state in the US and was visiting California on a trip with my wife. While eating out, we both witnessed a person that looked exactly like me. Same typical mid-fade and head dents inherited from my father, same body type. I saw the side profile from the back as they walked away from view, and it was my exact face. My wife had a direct view but could not remember directly what my face looked like, but noted that she was noticing similarities from the body to the head, even the way I walked. Couldn't believe what we saw. Any thoughts?" I mean, my thoughts are that maybe this was your other self from a parallel universe, or maybe it was just your twin from right here on Earth. I mean, they say that everyone has one, right? I just can't get past how it doesn't stop at them just looking alike though, like how they act and walk as well. In our number 7 spot today, we have the boss swap. Okay, this story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP giving us a little context and telling us that they work at a small processing plant in Texas, that they're 22 years old, and that they have been working there for about 4 months now. At the plant, they usually help the truck drivers with paperwork and inspections, and since most of the offices in the building have windows, from their office they can see the production line and they can see clearly into their boss's office and their supervisor's office, which are close together. So basically, one day at work they hear the bell ring and they go to help the person at the door. They then write, quote, "As I got up, I could clearly see my supervisor working on some bill of landings. I get to the door that leads to the shipping area, the driver lets me know why he is here, and I go back inside, head to my office to get the bills for him, and head outside so he can sign them. As of now, everything is normal, but things are about to take a huge turn. As I walk through the shipping door, I have a clear view of my supervisor. It's very normal for me to hand him the signed bills, and I'm walking towards his office. I can clearly see him working on the BOLs. As I get closer to the door of his office, there's a spot outside of his office where you can't see at all into the inside, and then as I open the door, he wasn't there anymore. Instead, I come to find a lady in her 50s, black hair, and about 5'9". I screamed WTF, and she looks at me in confusion and asks me what's wrong. I explain the situation to her. She seems perplexed by the story, but lets me know that she has been in this office all of the time, that Juan was never my supervisor, and she has been the supervisor for years. Now, I remember clearly when I first started working, Juan was presented as my supervisor. His name was on the door of his office, and him and I were getting along very well. I've asked everyone here at my company and they have all said the same thing. Rosie has been supervisor for years. I guess I switched universes because now even Juan's name isn't on his door and he barely speaks to me. I truly have no idea what could have happened here, but all I know is that basically having it happen in front of your eyes would have been so confusing. In our number 6 spot today, we have the sound. This story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP stating that when they were 8 years old, they were in a car accident and they believed that they died. They then go on to write, quote, "There was this sound, a note playing non-stop. It's similar to the sound of the machine when you flatline, but it was more instrumental. I've never forgotten, and when I asked my family, they said we were in an accident, just not in the place I remember. Is it possible to die and cross over to an alternate parallel world? That sound though, it felt like it was telling me to let go, but I could not." This story definitely had me intrigued, but what got me hooked even further was the top comment on the post, which read, quote, "Quantum immortality is what people are calling it. Others have experienced this too. You just end up in a slightly different world." Quantum immortality is something that I certainly had never heard of before, but it truly is quite an interesting and fascinating concept. What do you guys think? Is something else, something bigger at play here? In our number 5 spot today, we have double moms. This story comes from Reddit and it actually had my mind boggled when I read it, so I had to include it today too. They wrote, quote, "Back in 2012, I was staying with my mom for the last couple months of my pregnancy. She always left for work at about 7 a.m. and would wake me up while she was getting ready. This particular morning was the same thing. I'd see her out and lock the deadbolt behind her. I went into her room to watch my normal show as usual. I was watching TV at least 30 minutes before I had to use the restroom again. While I'm doing just that, my mom opened the door on me, stared at me for 3 to 4 seconds, and then closed the door. Within the time it took me to get up and wash my hands, she was gone. The deadbolt was still locked and her car wasn't in the driveway. I called to see where she was and she told me she was just pulling into work. Now today, if I ask her about it, she doesn't recall ever telling me about it. What happened that day? Honestly, I have no answer as to what could have possibly happened that day, but it all sounds very weird and unsettling, to say the least. In our number 4 spot today, we have The Past Life. This is a story about a feeling someone has had for most of their life, and that is the feeling that they had previously lived another life in which they were a father, despite them only being a kid at the time of beginning to have this feeling. They say, quote, "I remember being around 40 years old with a wife and 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and then one day I just woke up as a child and my past was all just a big blur with random memories that would come to me here or there. It made no sense. My parents said that I used to tell stories about when I was a dad and they would just laugh it off and be like, oh, that's just your imagination. But deep down I genuinely did have these strange memories of a past life." They then go on to talk about how a trip to Disney World with their family left them even more confused, as they had memories of their other family and them at Disney World despite them being only 4 years old at the time. They could remember where things were, where certain rides were, and they were able to show their family how to get around. In the end, they wrote, quote, "After a while I stopped telling these stories of when I was a dad because my siblings would always make fun of me for it. Eventually I just started going on with my life and haven't thought much about it since then. Although I wish I did, because the memories back then were so much more vivid and real than they are now." Does anybody have any similar stories? Does this ring any bells for anyone? I know this might sound stupid, but I genuinely am just interested if anyone else has experienced something like this. I don't know. I don't think it sounds stupid, I just wonder what it could all possibly mean. In our number 3 spot today, we have The Inventors. Okay, this story is about a disappearance that is said to have happened under some extremely suspicious circumstances. Basically, an inventor named William Cantello was working on a new invention that was said to be a rapid-firing machine gun. One day he was ready to head out and sell the idea, so he told his sons he was going to market to sell it, and he set off, but sadly this was the last time anyone saw him. Investigations by authorities and private investigators turned up little to nothing. Some suggested that perhaps he had gone to America, but there was no record or anything that could possibly prove this theory. The case went cold, but the plot began to thicken about 20 years later when an American man named Hiram Maxim invented a rapid-firing machine gun that he called the Maxim gun. The invention, however, wasn't the only similar thing to William. In fact, Hiram bore an uncanny resemblance to William, so much so that William's sons actually mistook him for their father. If all of this wasn't bizarre enough, in an autobiography of Hiram's, he spoke about how there was a man who was impersonating him and how he had been dealing with the effects of being mistaken for William for quite a while. Were these two the same people but in different realities? What other possible answers could there be for this very, very strange mystery?
Starting off this countdown, we have the new reality. There are a number of real people out there that have gone to bed and woke up in a completely different universe or reality. One where things are the same, but slightly different. Now, if you have seen our other videos, we have talked in depth about some of these stories, like the woman named Lorena Garcia. One day she woke up with a completely different job, was with the same company, just a different position, and she had a completely different boyfriend. Her former boyfriend just disappeared without a trace. And now she's stuck in this timeline versus her old one. Then you have a man that woke up and all of a sudden he was a fisherman. He spent the day living a different life, and the next day he was back to his old self. Now, no one knows what causes this to happen, but it personally terrifies me. What if I accidentally universe jump to a place where I'm unhappy, or my life is just completely different? Plus, no one would believe me, you know? They would label me as crazy. In our 9th spot today, we have the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is a huge signal from a parallel universe. For those of you who don't know, it is named after Nelson Mandela. This is because people remember him dying in prison in the 80s when, in this reality, he didn't pass away until 2013. Now, what's weird is I personally was taught in school that he died in prison in the 80s. We even had a school assembly on him and they taught us that. So theory goes that in one universe, Nelson Mandela did actually pass away in the 80s, and in another universe, he passed away in 2013. Somehow, the universes ended up overlapping or merging somehow, which is why some people remember him dying in the 80s and others in the 2000s. Now, there's a number of other examples, like, okay, here's a good one. Do you all remember in Star Wars, Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father"? I do. No, he never actually said that. He says, "No, I am your father," not even Luke. Also, you got the whole Berenstain Bears versus the Berenstein Bears. My whole life, it was the Steen Bears, not the Stain Bears. But, you know, whatever. Check out our other videos on Mandela effects if you want to learn more. It's actually wild. Moving on to number 8, we have the Green Children of Woolpit. Now, this story has always left me unsettled. There's no explanation besides a parallel universe. Anyways, now back in the 13th century, something very strange happened in the small village of Woolpit, England. 2 weird children randomly appeared in their village, and they were out of place. The 2 were brother and sister, but they had weird greenish colored skin. To make things weirder, they spoke in a language that no one had heard of, and they were dressed in weird clothing. Eventually, they were taken in, but sadly, the boy became sick and passed away. The girl, on the other hand, started to live a normal life. She started to eat normal food, and she started to lose the green color in her skin. After learning to speak English, she said that her and her brother were from a place where people had green skin, and the sun didn't shine bright. They were herding their dad's cattle when all of a sudden they heard a loud noise, and then bam, they were in a new place. Now the girl ended up growing up and marrying a man and starting a whole new life here. But it seems like the 2 traveled there from another dimension. Maybe there's a parallel universe where humans have green skin. But seriously, there's no other explanation for this story. It's absolutely wild. In our 7th spot today, we have the black holes. According to Stephen Hawking, he believes that black holes are a signal from a parallel universe. In 2016, Hawking created a study in which he proposed that black holes actually lead to another universe instead of destroying everything that goes near them. Previously, it was said that everything that gets sucked into the black holes will just be destroyed and lost forever. But in this case, they would just travel through and then pop out into another universe. Maybe that's why scientists are starting to discover weird space objects that look unlike anything from our universe. It's because they're from a different universe. Maybe Stephen Hawking was onto something and black holes are actually portals. In our 6th spot, we have the UFO lights. So there have been a number of stories of the military or airplanes seeing weird bright lights in the sky that look like they're from a UFO craft. There's even a blip on their radar suggesting that something is flying in the air. But when they get to the space where the craft is supposed to be, it disappears without a trace, or it's just not there for them to see. Now, there's a new theory that this could be a signal from aliens or other beings from another universe. In fact, a study from 2018 suggests that aliens are probably real, but the reason we haven't found them yet is because they're living on planets in other universes. Maybe every time we think we see a craft, it's them signaling to us from their universe. I mean, aliens are said to be way more advanced than us, so chances are they probably are trying to find a way to contact us or to travel to us. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the other version of yourself. A number of people have shared stories in which people are like, "Oh hey, I saw you at this place, how did you get here?" Or "Hey, I just finished talking to you at the grocery store," and they're like, "I wasn't at the grocery store, I wasn't talking to you." One guy shared a story where he got a text from his friend saying, "Was so great to catch up, hope to see you again soon." Now, he was confused, so he gave his friend a call. And the friend said that he just finished talking to him outside of a coffee shop for about 15 minutes, and that he told him all about his promotion. First off, the guy was home all day, okay, so he wasn't at the coffee shop. Second, he hadn't told anyone about his new promotion. So it's believed that his friend was talking to himself from another universe. How wild is that? I just hope my parallel universe self is doing well. In our 4th spot today, we have the time traveler. So not only are parallel universes real, but time travel or dimension hopping might also be real too. A guy named Gavin might have the answers to this. So when this guy was around 16, he had a best friend named Gavin. Gavin was extremely smart. Apparently he had an IQ of around 180, but he was also kind of socially awkward. Now, the narrator and him used to spend a lot of time at each other's houses, playing World of Warcraft, watching YouTube videos, you name it. Anyways, one day he decided to show up at Gavin's house uninvited to see if he wanted to hang out. When he got there was a man around 40 years old and he opened the door. At first he thought it was Gavin's dad because they looked the same, but it wasn't. So he asked him if Gavin was home, and that's when the man said, "I am Gavin." The narrator was like, "No, the 16-year-old Gavin." He thought maybe this was his uncle or something and they had the same name. That's when his face went completely pale, and he said that Gavin would be home in about an hour. Sure enough, he went back to his house an hour later and young Gavin was there. But when the narrator asked him who had been at his house earlier, Gavin was confused. He had no one else in his family named Gavin, and no one had been in his house prior. Not only that, but years later, Gavin ended up studying quantum mechanics. So theory 1, Gavin learned how to time travel. Theory 2, the narrator managed to meet with Gavin's parallel universe self. Or theory 3, the narrator somehow managed to jump in time. To this day, no one knows how to explain what happened to him. In our third spot, we have the parallel universe being. So 5 years ago, this individual thinks that they met someone from another universe, or that they traveled to another universe. Let me explain. So, one day she was at the beach with her dog when she saw this strange man walking across the street. The man really stood out to her because he was donning the biggest smile on his face, and he was walking like a cartoon character. His arms were just swinging from side to side with very exaggerated movements. A couple months later, she was with her mom and sister when she saw the exact same man again. Her sister noticed him first and commented on how weird he was walking. Almost immediately, their mom piped up and said to not make fun of this man. Now here's where it gets strange. A couple weeks later, the girl was out for a late night run when she encountered this man for a third time. However, this time, something was very off about him. He wasn't happy and he wasn't swinging his arms like before. This time, he had a huge frown on his face and he was walking all slumped over and sad. The girl ran home and told her mom and sister what she had saw, but they had no clue what she was talking about. She talked about the time that all three of them had seen this man and how the mom was like, "Don't make fun of him, okay? Leave him alone." But the mom and sister both did not remember the encounter at all. It's almost like it never happened. So basically, the girl was in one universe where this man was happy and weirdly outgoing, and then managed to switch into another universe where this man was just the complete opposite. In the second universe, the encounter with this man and the mom and sister never happened, which is why they had no clue what she was talking about. Isn't that wild? Like, it's literally mind-blowing. Moving on to number 2, we have the deaths. A number of people have also shared their experience with dying and then waking up in another reality. This individual got into a car accident on February 20th, 2022, so this story happened fairly recently. She was driving home from work when the weather shifted. Sadly, a truck traveling by her ended up crashing into her, and she crashed into the guardrails and then off the side of the road into the water below. She vividly remembers this happening. She remembers feeling the force of the truck hitting her and crashing into the water, and then madly trying to escape as her car flooded with water. Unfortunately, her legs were crushed underneath the dashboard, and she was unable to move. She sadly lost her life. But the next thing she knew, she was alive. The car accident never happened. She was fine. Currently, this woman is coping with the trauma from what she went through. She doesn't understand it one bit, but she knows that she died and she knows that she shouldn't be alive. And in our number 1 spot today, we have swapped in time. Have you ever had amnesia and you just can't recall certain things? Maybe people are telling you stories of things you witnessed, but you seriously just can't remember any of it? Well, some researchers believe that maybe they somehow swapped places with a parallel universe version of themselves. And that's why they don't remember what happened. Because they weren't the ones that witnessed it. It was their other version of themselves. Now, this kind of makes sense. I mean, I remember a bunch of things that my family doesn't, and then they end up calling me a liar saying that these things never happened when I know in fact that they did, okay? So maybe it just happened in another universe for me. Starting off this countdown, we have the warning. This individual actually received a signal from his parallel universe self, and had he not, he might have actually died. So the narrator, who wants to remain anonymous, let's call him Robbie, was out walking one day when he saw a version of himself across the street. At first, he thought he was just seeing things, but surely right across the street was himself, just staring at him. He was dressed in identical clothing and everything. Robbie stopped and stared at him when all of a sudden his twin yelled out, "Run!" At that moment, a car came hurtling towards Robbie's twin. He saw himself get hit by the car, so he turned and he ran. And it's a good thing that he did, because seconds later, that same car came hurtling towards him. He looked back and Robbie in the car that hit him was gone, but there was a real accident that occurred right in front of his eyes. Had he not run, he would have been hit and killed. So he believes that his parallel universe self saved himself from dying. In our 9th spot today, we have the reverse signals. In 2016 and in 2018, scientists in Antarctica discovered radio pulses being emitted from the ground. The radio pulses detected high-energy neutrinos and were discovered by the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, otherwise known as ANITA. But here's the weird thing. The signals were coming up out of the Earth and heading towards the sky. Since the signals were coming up from the Earth instead of down from space, people believe that they may be traveling back in time and therefore from a parallel universe. For this universe, the Big Bang represents the end and not the beginning. Coming in at number 8, we have Euronymous. This story really freaking gives me the creeps. Basically, a Norwegian black metal fan believes that he's stuck in the wrong universe. So the story was posted by I Love Transylvania on Reddit. They asked for help and advice. It all started when he woke up and found out that his favorite musician, Euronymous, had died. But not recently. He died in 1993. Immediately, he thought that this was some kind of joke because just recently he had seen him in concert. The year he saw him was 2013, which is 20 years after his death, which is physically impossible. Not only that, but in the early 2000s, he bumped into him in a shop and even bought a record from him there. Not only that, but he can't seem to get in contact with any of his friends. He tries calling and texting, but their numbers are all out of service. So this guy either thinks he's going insane or he somehow got transported to another universe, our current one, in which Euronymous passed away in 1993. In our 7th spot today, we have the Man from Torrid. Now, this might be a perfect example of some accidental dimension jumping. Now, you might be sick of hearing me talk about this story, but it literally blows my mind. It's one of my favorite stories, so I'm sharing it again. For those of you who don't know, in July of 1954, a well-dressed man arrived at the Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan. When he was questioned at customs, he said he was from a place called Torrid. However, as we know, Torrid is not a real place. So immediately the officers were like, red flag, detain him. Later, he was placed in a hotel and was monitored by 2 guards. In the hotel, his room was placed high up and there was only one entry and exit point. Yet he still managed to escape. How he managed to escape is physically impossible. So, some people think that Torrid is a real place, but it's located in a different universe. And this man somehow passed through a parallel dimension and ended up at the airport. Others think that it's all just a made-up legend. If so, then why did the story get international news and wind up in the papers? I don't know, it's up to you. You believe whatever, but I think it's freaking creepy. Coming in at number 6, we have the parallel drivers. You're about to notice a trend here. A number of parallel universe stories feature cars and car accidents. It's quite weird. Like this one. So this next guy was visiting his grandparents when he was almost hit by a car. So he was in a car park when a car nearly hit him and another car. As the car passed him, he got a look at the passengers. And that's when he knew that something was very off. In the car, there were 3 passengers, a woman, her daughter, and a male driver. What was weird is that they were all staring, looking forward, with no emotion on their face whatsoever. It looked as if they were all just zoned out or in another world. Maybe quite literally. As the car continued driving by, he realized that it was his family's car. Freaking out, thinking that their car had been stolen, he ran to his family, only to find the car parked in the grandparents' driveway. Now, I don't have an explanation for this one. I really don't. But it seems like the people in that car were from another dimension, and were unaware that they were appearing elsewhere. Seems like the two universes might have merged for that second. Coming in at number 4, we have precognitive dreams. Precognitive dreams are dreams that can predict the future, or they can provide you with information that you wouldn't have otherwise known. There are a number of people that have had this happen to them, including myself. I've had dreams and then the next day it's come true, and there's no possible way for me to have known that this was going to happen. In fact, we have a whole series on dreams that have predicted the future, so if you want, check that out as well. Anyways, one theory is that these dreams are signals from your other self in a different universe. Maybe something is about to happen in your life and has already happened in their life. Or they're sending you a signal in your sleep to warn you about upcoming dangers. Moving on to number 3, we have the change of route. A couple of years ago, the next narrator was walking to work one day when they all of a sudden had an urge to take a different path. Every day they took the same route, but today they decided to go down a different way. So they turned and went down an alley. Now, I mean, any normal person would be like, no, don't go down that creepy dark alley, you're gonna get mugged or killed. But something was telling this guy that he needed to go down that way. So he did. And that's when he zoned out. He said that his mind went scrambled. He also said, and I quote, "I felt like I didn't have a body anymore, just that I was a semi-conscious entity floating through some weird dimension. All of a sudden, in the array of different colors and shapes, a vision came to me. It was a bunch of strange-looking people that in my mind resembled businessmen in suits. They looked startled and panicked that I could see them. One of the people made a quick movement and everything turned black. Then when he snapped out of this, he found himself on a completely different street, back on his way to work." I don't have an explanation for this. Honestly, it seems like for a split second he was looking into another universe or something though. In our second spot, we have the close call. Several years ago, this guy worked at Little Caesars Pizza. He worked as one of those sign spinners, you know, to get people into the store. One day, while sign spinning, he saw a van heading straight at him. It drove over the curb and hit him directly. He felt it crush him against the street post. Then everything turned black. But all of a sudden, he gasped and he was awake and still alive. He's still on the corner and he's still holding his sign. No car was there, he was alive. Since he was shaken from the experience, he decided to go inside the store for his break. As he walked away, he heard a loud crash. As he turned around, he saw the same van crash into the street post where he had been standing. So maybe in another universe, he died from that car crash. In this universe, he survived. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the portal. There's a cabin in the Marcahuasi Stone Forest in Peru that apparently is a ticket to another dimension. This story was told by a woman who one day was out camping in the forest with her friends. That's when they heard music coming from another area in the forest, so they decided to follow the sound and check it out. Then they came across a small stone cabin. It was illuminated by torches. What was weird is that they could see in through the windows, and the people inside were wearing 17th century fashion. The women, being curious, decided to go check it out. In fact, one of the friends was a little too curious and she tried entering the cabin. She stepped foot inside when her friend pulled her away. Instantly, half of her body became paralyzed. It was the half that entered the cabin. To this day, she still remains paralyzed on that side of her body. So it's believed that this cabin would have taken them to another dimension. Since half of her body entered another dimension and then was yanked out, it threw off her nervous system, resulting in her partial paralysis.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have deja vu. At some point or another, most of us have experienced deja vu, and a lot of the time these experiences can be a little creepy and a little unsettling, to say the least. It's the feeling of having been there before, doing the same thing. The feeling of already having experienced the present situation. It's weird. Perhaps it's just some sort of weird human phenomena that lacks an explanation, but maybe it's a sign or a signal that somewhere, perhaps in another universe, a similar situation already happened to the other you. This deja vu story reflects that quite well, as this person tells a story of a time that their deja vu saved their life. Diztronics17 on Reddit wrote in response to a prompt asking for everyone's creepiest deja vu moment, quote, "I saw a Prius on the shoulder of the Garden State Parkway. For some reason I had a memory of a Prius all of a sudden darting into traffic. As a precaution I moved over a lane and sure enough the idiot floors it into traffic without looking right where I would have been driving." made me think. Maybe this again is just a weird human phenomena, but maybe it's a sign of something else. Something bigger. In our number 9 spot today we have the bird. This story comes from someone who saw something weird, and it wasn't out of the corner of their eye or anything like that. They saw it right in front of them as they were directly looking at it, and as of now there doesn't really seem to be any sort of concrete explanation as to how this could have happened. They wrote, quote, "I was standing outside work having a smoke. I was looking at the bike rack and thinking about how silly it was they just placed one there and didn't bolt it down or anything. Then a bird footprint showed up. Just one footprint, like a ghost bird put just one foot down in the middle of the otherwise undisturbed snow. It happened right in front of me. I was looking exactly where it happened when it happened. Very weird. Most likely the snow just happened to collapse in that shape, but still, it was strange. Maybe the snow just collapsed, maybe it was a ghost bird, or maybe it has more to do with another universe colliding with ours. Whatever the answer really is, this story kind of gives me the chills. Maybe the birds aren't the bourgeoisie and they can just jump timelines, and that's why they're so suspicious. In our number 8 spot today we have the ice cream stain. This is a strange story that someone posted online about a weird glitch in the Matrix type thing that happened to them, and it just might be an example of someone who jumped realities. They wrote, quote, "I spilled chocolate ice cream on my leg. I wiped it off and there was still a pale brown stain in the shape of the ice cream splotch. I told my mother, who said it was a birthmark. I will swear under oath that never before that moment did I have a birthmark there." Does anyone else have any weird stories like this? It's easy for us to chalk these things up to just having a wild childhood imagination, but that's also because it's an easy explanation. Maybe it's time we start asking ourselves the harder, more interesting questions. I feel like someone would remember having a birthmark. Right? In our number 7 spot today we have the randomness. Okay, when looking for signs or signals from other universes, sometimes we have to look in the most peculiar places, and that includes some of the strange things that happen in our reality. Bizarre, seemingly random things happen here all the time, and maybe it's because we live in a weird world, or maybe it's a sign that since the idea of parallel universes means that there's a universe where basically every random thing you can think of is a reality, we just live in a universe where some of those random things are bound to happen. Like, who would have guessed that Napoleon would almost be taken out by a bunch of bunnies? Or like how people can survive the seemingly impossible, like a fall out of an airplane at over 30,000 feet without a parachute. You know, just things you hear that you can't believe. I'm sure many of you watching this have seen a video on this channel at some point that had someone say something that made you go, really? And that's what I'm talking about. Maybe this isn't the best evidence of parallel universes, but hey, everything counts. In our number 6 spot today we have the conversation. This is a story that comes from someone who seems to have a sort of unusual talent, we'll call it. Maybe they're just super smart, maybe they can see the future, or maybe something else is going on here. They start by explaining that they have dreams about people or places they've never seen before, and then without fail a few months later they'll be with the people or in the place that they had dreamt about. They also have this ability to sing a random song while another one is playing on the radio, and then somehow, like magic, the next song that plays is the one they were just singing. They then go on to say, quote, "One super weird thing though happened in about 2012ish. I was 19 and living at home with my parents and younger sister still. I came home from work from my job at a barbecue place and my sister says to me, 'Oh, I thought you were off today.' I'm confused because I left at 5 AM before anyone was awake, and I ask her, 'When did I say that?' She says to me, 'Like 2 hours ago in your room.' She thinks I'm screwing with her, so I tell her to smell me because you can smell the barbecue sauce and smoke on me. Then she gets really creeped out and tells me she had went into my room earlier and saw me in bed with covers up to my neck and had a 15-minute conversation with me. That really creeped me out and I never felt comfortable in that room ever again." This actually would be really weird to experience for everyone involved. Maybe this was just a weird glitch in the Matrix, or maybe something else was at play here. Whatever it is, it seems like this person has a lot of weird things happening around them. In our number 5 spot today we have black holes. Black holes are some of the most mysterious, mystifying, and terrifying things that exist out there in the ether. They can be super small or massively large, and they are extremely dense. Their gravity is so strong that absolutely nothing can escape, and that is exactly why, I mean, coupled with the fact that one of these will turn you into spaghetti if you get too close, but that's why we know little to nothing about what lurks on the inside. Hear me out. Especially if you've seen Interstellar, great movie by the way, Matthew McConaughey is so good in it. What if black holes somehow connect us to other universes? I know it sounds insane and kind of like a silly idea, but in the end, if other universes exist and they run parallel to ours, then there really is no idea too wild or crazy, because that's one of the most insane things I can possibly think of. In our number 4 spot today we have The Hand. This is a story from someone who just might have seen a hand reach from another universe into ours. Maybe it's all just a glitch in the system, but it's an eerie story nonetheless. They wrote, quote, "I was putting makeup on and from the corner of my eye I saw what looked like the shadow of a hand slap down onto my nightstand. Would have dismissed it as my brain playing tricks on me or something, but I heard it too, and it sounded like a really loud smack. It was weird, but I've experienced so many small unusual incidents like this, things randomly falling or shaking, so I guess I've become apathetic to it. That was the first time I ever actually heard the thing too though." Not only would that be pretty terrifying, but also so confusing. You wouldn't trust your mind no matter what it was telling you. You know what you saw and heard, but could it possibly be true? Maybe there's a reasonable explanation, maybe it's whoever's in charge of the simulation, and maybe it has something to do with another universe. At this point, anything is possible. In our number 3 spot today we have space signals. There are tons and tons of signals that we detect from space every single year. Some we understand and can figure out where they're coming from and what is causing them, and some others aren't quite so clear and have stumped researchers for years. Some believe that these mysterious unexplained signals are coming from extraterrestrials. Perhaps the signals we are receiving is from some sort of space situation that we just don't know about yet because it doesn't occur close to us here on Earth. The possibilities really are endless when we're talking about the ever-expanding universe and the unexplained things that exist within it, and that is why, just perhaps, these signals could mean something else. Maybe in another universe we are well aware of the other universes that exist parallel to that one, and we are trying to communicate with the one that we live in. Maybe the signals are being sent through black holes. Okay, maybe I'm getting a little far-fetched, but really, anything could happen. In our number 2 spot today we have The Time Jump. This is a story about a location that has some weird sort of time jump. At first everyone thought the person experiencing it was playing some kind of a prank, until others experienced it for themselves as well. They wrote, quote, "Had a friend who was convinced something was wrong with the area between the nearby town and his home. Or maybe it was his car. He claimed that many times he'd leave work and somehow be home 5 minutes later when it was a 15 to 20 minute drive. It was crazy. He wasn't the only one who experienced it either. Happened to a few friends that rode with him. Definitely weird stuff." I mean, listen, I hate commuting, so I wouldn't be upset by this sort of a glitch, but I would definitely be confused. I'm glad other people got to experience the weirdness of the situation too. I wonder if it had something to do with just his car and the area, because you'd think other people who drove the same roads would notice the same thing too, right? In our number 1 spot today we have the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect began being widely recognized when people began to swear that they could remember Nelson Mandela passing away in the 1980s. This is of course weird since he actually passed away in 2013. That's a huge time discrepancy, so people were very confused. This of course is how it got the name the Mandela Effect, and basically there are 2 main ideas behind this theory. One is that whoever is responsible for the simulation we live in has gone back and changed some things, and the other theory applies to us in our video today, and it's the idea that in a parallel universe the things we remember happened, but then somehow we jumped into this timeline in which things happened similarly but slightly differently. Other really famous cases of the Mandela Effect are the Bernstein Bears, where some people swear it used to be spelled with the ending being S-T-E-I-N, while all copies now are spelled with S-T-A-I-N. Or the popular peanut brand called Jif, there are people who swear it used to be called Jiffy. The list just goes on. There are tons and tons of examples of the Mandela Effect, and I think most people can relate to at least one, so maybe this really is signifying something bigger going on here.
Moving on at number 9 we have The Dreams, and if you guys are liking this so far, then smash that like button because it really helps me out and I appreciate it and you're the best. Some scientists believe that dreams are actually glimpses into a parallel universe. By dreaming, you are seeing what yourself in another universe is doing. 1,000 years ago, mystics believed that dreams are what are happening in a parallel universe. But they also believed that this universe was home to ghosts and spirits. Well, over the years, scientists have agreed with this theory, minus all the ghost and spirit stuff. Well, this could explain why some people have had vivid dreams of places that they have never visited. Maybe that's because their other self was currently there visiting it. Or when you see something in your dream and then the next day it happens in real life. That has happened to me on a number of occasions. Either you're psychic or you got an insight into another universe when you were dreaming, and that's how you knew it was going to occur. Now, there is no way to prove this, but there's also no way to disprove this. In our 8th spot today, we have the Flintstones. Who loves this classic cartoon? That and the Jetsons were pretty iconic. Smash that like button if you agree. Now, the Flintstones are pronounced as so you would think it would be spelt as so. No, apparently it's the Flint Stones with the hard T. I refuse to believe this. Now, you may be thinking, Lindsay, what's the big deal? Well, this is an example of the Mandela effect. I've talked about this before a lot. Basically, it's when a bunch of people remember something being a certain way, and another group of people remember it being a different way. The Mandela effect, for those of you who don't know, is named off of Nelson Mandela, because people clearly remember him dying in prison in the 80s when he didn't actually pass away until 2013. So theory goes that there are parallel universes out there. In this case, we have the Flintstones universe and the Flintstones universe. Over time, maybe our universes merged, which is why we have the memory of the Flintstones. The show was actually named that, just in another universe. Little things like these are signs that multiple universes are out there. In our 7th spot today, we have the strange space signals. In spring of 2020, NASA legit thought they found concrete evidence of parallel universes. Basically, they detected some odd signals coming from the South Pole. It was so odd that they had no explanation for it besides parallel universes. So basically, they discovered that high energy neutrinos were coming up out of the Earth and headed to the sky. In fact, they found that this energy was coming up from the Earth instead of down from space. Now, this was weird for a number of reasons. The fact it was going up suggests that when the Big Bang occurred, it formed two universes, one that flows forward and the other in reverse, meaning the other universe is traveling back in time while we're moving forward. For them, the Big Bang represents an end, not the beginning. That is mind-blowing. In our 6th spot, we have Star Wars. This is another example of the Mandela effect, and it's going to make you freaking lose your mind. Who here is a Star Wars fan? Smash that like button or comment down below if you are. Well, even if you're not a fan, I'm sure you all have heard or seen that dramatic scene where it's revealed that Luke's father is, spoiler alert, Darth Vader. He goes, "Luke, I am your father." Wrong. Apparently, he never even said that, yet we all remember him saying the line exactly like that. And even huge Star Wars fans agree to this. Well, when you watch the scene, Luke says, "He told me you killed him," in regards to Obi-Wan telling him that Darth Vader killed his dad. Then Darth Vader replies with, "No, I am your father." So he never even says Luke, it's just no. What the actual heck? So again, people believe that this is a sign that we switched universes. In the other universe, the movie had Darth Vader say the line, "Luke, I am your father." In this universe, he did not. Mad at that one. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the black holes. This next theory was created by Stephen Hawking, and that dude was a freaking genius. So if he believes that black holes are a signal from a parallel universe, then maybe I do too. So in 2016, Stephen Hawking created a study in which he proposed that black holes actually lead to another universe. Instead of destroying everything that goes near them, it just transports you into another universe. Previously, it was said that anything that gets sucked into the hole will be destroyed and lost forever. But in this case, they would just travel through and pop out into another universe. Maybe that's why scientists are starting to discover weird space objects that look unlike anything from our universe. It's because they're coming from a different universe. Maybe Stephen Hawking is onto something, and black holes are actually portals. In our 4th spot, we have the simulation. In 2018, researchers ran a massive computer simulation that involved building a new universe under a variety of different conditions, and they discovered that universes could still be created even with less dark energy as ours. Study co-author Pascal Elahi said, and I quote, "Even in universes with 300 times as much dark energy as ours, life found a way. Our simulation showed that the accelerated expansion driven by dark energy has hardly any impact on the birth of stars, and hence places for life to arise." Meaning, other planets can exist in other universes, even if that universe was being torn apart by dark energy. He continued on saying, and I quote, "Even increasing dark energy many hundreds of times might not be enough to make a dead universe." They then went on to believe that aliens are living on planets in other universes. The reason we haven't found them yet is because they're in other universes, not ours. In our third spot, we have the pattern. A number of astronomers started picking up a weird signal coming from the sky. Basically, the signal will chime for 4 days, then after the 4th day, it'll stop. It will then stop for 12 days before picking up again and doing the same thing over and over again. It's thought that maybe on the days where it's not sending a signal towards us, it's actually sending a signal in another direction or to another universe. Some believe that this is coming from aliens or other life forms, or from people in another universe. If not, what else could it be? The signal is very consistent and they still don't have an explanation for it. In our second spot, we have the silence of the lambs. Here's another Mandela effect example that will make you lose your mind. Okay. All of you have better seen the movie Silence of the Lambs. If you haven't, you're not a true horror fan. Anyways, for some reason, we all remember Hannibal Lecter going, "Hello, Clarice." You know, that was my Anthony Hopkins impression. Pretty good one. And he says it in a really freaking scary way. But apparently, he never said that in the movie. He only has said good morning during their first meeting. This is not okay. I literally can picture him saying it right now. So here's another sign that there are multiple universes. There's a universe where Anthony Hopkins does "Hello, Clarice," and one where he doesn't. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the cosmic bruise. In 2017, cosmologists discovered a weird cold spot in the universe. After studying it, a number of people believe that this cold spot is a bruise that was left after our universe collided with another universe. Professor Tom Shanks in Durham University's Center for Extragalactic Astronomy said, and I quote, "One explanation for the cold spot is that it might be the remnant signal of the collision of our universe and one of the trillions of others." In fact, the team found 4 bruises, meaning that our universe has collided several other times in the past. Meaning, there has to be multiple universes out there.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Bermuda Triangle. Ever wondered about the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle? It's a known spot for boat and plane disappearances. This spot between Miami, Bermuda and San Juan in Puerto Rico has seen a large number of mysterious disappearances, leading some people to speculate that there is something mysterious and malicious going on. Some of the most notable losses have been the USS Cyclops that disappeared with 308 people on board in 1918, and the disappearance of the US Navy Avenger torpedo planes in 1945. According to the Express news publication, on average 4 planes and 20 boats are reported lost every year in the area. While we've never officially gotten to the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle mystery, some people think that it is a portal to another universe, and well, I guess that's why. I mean, why couldn't there be a portal in the ocean? Recently, a treasure hunter claimed that they found an unidentified object that they believe is an alien spaceship under the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe it isn't something that crash landed, maybe it's something that came up. Perhaps it's a scary signal from a parallel universe. Coming into number 9, we have the Aurora Borealis. Is the aurora, otherwise known as the Northern Lights, a signal from another universe? The aurora appears as glowing curtains, like thin pieces of fabric waving in the wind. They're parallel rays that move in the direction of magnetic winds. They're charged solar particles reacting with our atmosphere and magnetic field. But can you imagine what people thought when they first saw them? Even though we have an explanation these days, people still find them understandably mystical. Some people believe that they are where the multiverses collide and 2 dimensions touch. This idea is kind of explored in Philip Pullman's Northern Lights or the Golden Compass, where the aurora lights the passage to another world. Okay, let's get a little further into the physics of the Earth's poles, shall we? Coming into number 8, we have the South Atlantic Anomaly. So the Earth has a double set of radiation belts, the outer and inner radiation belts that splay out like wings surrounding the Earth. This is often referred to as Van Allen. Anyway, these pull in the magnetic poles, but there is something weird going on, the South Atlantic Anomaly. This is where the Earth's inner Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the Earth's surface, dipping down to just 120 miles in the sky. Here is where the Earth's magnetic field is weakest. This area has higher than usual levels of radiation. The International Space Station has extra shielding when passing through this area, and the Hubble Space Telescope doesn't take observations when it passes through. Astronauts have claimed to see weird shooting stars in this area too. Now the anomaly is exactly that. An anomaly. There's no matching in the north. Some people think that it means that our magnetic poles are primed and ready to flip. Others say it's evidence of a portal to a parallel universe. Alright, taking it in a different direction at number 7, we have cows falling through this sky. So like, how else would you explain a cow falling through the sky to Earth? Clearly the cow is just grazing way too near to a rip or a window in its parallel universe and it fell through to ours. But like a really inconvenient location in the sky. I don't know, it does sound crazy, sure. In 2003, the New York Times ran an article about a Japanese fishing boat that was sunk by a flying cow, or more accurately, a cow that fell from the sky. In 2013, a Brazilian man was killed when a cow fell through his roof and crushed him. Where are these cows coming from? Could they be from another dimension? Maybe. Coming into number 6, we have the quantum jump. According to a man named Burt Goldman, often referred to as the American monk, he can jump through to alternate universes using meditation. Goldman has practiced Zen meditation for 50 years and now believes that he can access the multiverse. In one of his controversial YouTube videos, he says that there is an infinite number of parallel realities existing with us in the same room. He describes his multidimensional mental teleportation as a controlled daydream, which actually kind of builds on from our part 1 where we discussed some cultures believing that dreams come from a parallel universe. Coming into number 5, we have Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Some people believe that mirrors offer a glimpse into an alternate reality. A lot of these people have watched a lot of Star Trek, but to be fair, after scripting 2 of these videos and hearing some of the finer physics behind it all, it isn't even the craziest thing that I've ever heard. Believers in the occult and witchcraft often have a lot of superstitions surrounding mirrors. Perhaps Bloody Mary isn't a ghoul summoned from the dead, but a spooky lady from an alternate reality. Or maybe not. Some people believe that if you stare hard enough at your own reflection, you'll catch a glimpse of a parallel you, but this could just be hypnotic hallucination. Alright, building on from mirrors for a moment, at number 4 we have what lives behind the dark matter. Over the last few decades, scientists have observed a whole bunch of dark matter hanging out in our universe. Dark matter, so to speak, are dark spots that seem to make up 26.8% of our universe. No one knows what it consists of, and no one's ever really seen it because it doesn't interact with the matter that scientists know about, visible matter that makes up around 4.9% of what we can see. Cosmology is a vast and complicated topic and field of study, so to simplify intense and thoroughly researched studies, some cosmologists do think that dark matter could be the sign of another inverse universe existing side by side to ours, but unseen. If you do want to do a deep dive into dark matter, I would recommend checking out Lisa Randall and Gigi Fan's new theory of dark matter. Coming into number 3, we have the mysterious case of Linnea Barcia. The internet is awash with stories from Linnea Barcia's strange day. The woman wrote to a Spanish website to say that she'd somehow jumped to another universe in 2008. This universe was similar, but not quite her known reality. The post came in 2008 and the 41-year-old said that she was worried that she was suffering from a psychotic breakdown, and I get it. She said that she'd gone to sleep one evening and woken up the next day to find a world around her altered in very strange and subtle ways. The sheets on her bed, for example, were different, which was somewhat baffling. When she went to work, she found that she was actually working in a different department in a slightly different part of the office. She found that she was still with her ex-boyfriend, not her new boyfriend of 4 months. Her sister had never had the surgery on her arm that she swore that she did. Odd. She wrote that the rest of the world seemed much the same. She went to the doctors and they suggested that she was suffering from hallucinogenic stress. Maybe she was, or maybe she slipped into a parallel universe. Coming into number 2, we have aliens and UFOs. There have been a number of alien and UFO sightings throughout history, and things really seem to ramp up between the 1940s and 1980s. The most notorious sightings include the Roswell crash landings, the Kenneth Arnold sightings, the Lubbock lights, the 76 Tehran incident, and the Belgium wave. The problem is that none of the sightings have ever been confirmed as aliens, they're simply unidentified objects amid unexplained phenomenon. On top of that, cosmologists and astronomers haven't identified any life beyond our planet as of yet, so it couldn't possibly be aliens, unless they've figured out how to travel faster than the speed of light and move quickly into hyperspace, in which case they could be coming from a parallel galaxy, or maybe they travelled through a wormhole from a parallel universe. Alright, finally coming into number 1, we have one of the most credible pieces of evidence for a parallel universe, but it gets pretty heavy, so bear with me, we're talking about electrons. Alright, so this is some pretty deep physics and it can get a bit intense, so I just want you to open your mind for a moment. So this is the humble electron. It could be the key to proving parallel universes once and for all. Electrons are little subatomic particles. Now, I want to try and keep it simple so we can all understand, but electrons can spin both clockwise and anti-clockwise. But quantum mechanics says that they can spin both clockwise and counterclockwise at the very same time, which means there are two things happening at the same time, which is hard for us to get our heads around because how? To quote an article in Noteworthy, if the world is full of weird objects that are spinning clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time, why have I in my entire life never seen that happen? That excellent question is the heart of what has become known as the quantum measurement paradox. The answer here simply could be the multiverse, and the key could be the makeup of everything. Electrons get even weirder as observed in quantum indeterminism. Basically, to keep this simple, if you fire an electron through a double slit, you would expect it to go through one slit or the other. However, scientists have observed electrons acting like waves, passing through both slits simultaneously and interfering with itself at the end. It's very, very complicated, but this could be a hint towards proving the theory that multiple outcomes create multiple universes. For example, there's a universe that exists where I put my hair behind my ear, and there's one where I chose not to. They may interfere with one another. Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the deep space radio bursts. Mystery fast radio bursts were discovered in 2007. These bursts flash for a micro instant, but emit more energy than the sun does in 10,000 years. The high energy surges of long waves have been detected 18 times over the past 10 years, and one burst in 2012 recorded in Puerto Rico occurred numerous times in the same pattern. Okay, this is what it sounded like. After fierce debates and a lot of head scratching, the source of the sound was traced to a microgalaxy 3 billion light years away from Earth. A lot of theorists have concluded that the sound is a space signal from another world, or a parallel universe looking to get in touch. Coming in at number 6, we have the Lost Beatles album. A parallel universe may have given our world a gift in the form of a Lost Beatles album, Everyday Chemistry. The story goes that in 2009, a man called James Richards found himself accidentally in a parallel universe, as you do. Luckily, there was also a person from another parallel universe there, a man named Jonas. Now, Jonas was on a trans-dimensional tourism trip from the other Earth, and he told Richards that in his world, amongst other things, John Lennon was still alive and the Beatles never broke up. Richards then stole a copy of a later album never released by the band and returned with it to our Earth. What did he do with one of the most sought after pieces of music from a non-history that almost but never happened here? He uploaded it to the internet. Eagle-eared fans were absolutely having none of it though. They said the album is comprised of clever mashups from all of the Beatles' solo careers. Richards later said that even though in an alternate universe the Beatles hadn't broke up, that didn't mean their future music ideas disappeared. I'm not so sure about this one, but I would love to hear what Paul McCartney has to say about it. Paul, tell us, is it real? I guess you're living in another universe so you don't know, but I don't know. I feel like you'd be able to answer. Coming in at number 5, we have dreams. Could our dreams be signals from a parallel universe? Some say maybe. In a number of First Nations cultures in North and Central America, people believe that dreams allow us to walk planes in other dimensions. Their reasoning is that dreams take place in color and can include all of their senses. They think that when you're in a dream, you are in another world, perhaps a world you already exist in if you're doing something strange in your dream, maybe it's a sign that actually you live a far stranger life somewhere else. Coming in at number 4, we have the bruise. Anyone else here bruised like a peach? Just me? Me? And the universe. In 2010, along with a team of researchers, Stephen Feeney of the University College in London announced that he had discovered patterns in the radiation background left over from the Big Bang. Now this seemed to suggest that our universe bumped into not 1, not 2, but 4 other universes and was left bruised. Okay, what is the plural of universes? Universi? Universi? Universi. Also, from the bruising, further researchers in California think that it is clear that this leads to some kind of like bubble universe theory, which maybe I can get on board with. Maybe Men in Black got it right when they imagined us all as marbles in a big bag. Coming into number 3, we have the cold spot. In 2004, astronomers found something that baffled them, an unusually cold area of space. The area is 1.8 billion light years across and much colder than its surroundings. The area also contained 10,000 less galaxies than in other areas of a similar size studied in space. A researcher from Durham University in the UK believed that the spot could be evidence of a multiverse. They said it seemed as if a parallel universe smashed into ours, affecting it like a car pile-up on the motorway would, only they're calling it a cosmic shunt. They believed the impact was so vast it pushed energy out from a big region of space, therefore creating the cold spot. It's hard to get your head around, but that is what they think. Coming in at number 2, we have City in the Sky. In October 2015, Chinese TV went wild when thousands of residents in 2 areas of the country reported seeing a huge floating city in the clouds. Puzzled onlookers saw skyscrapers in the clouds and believed that they were seeing a ghost city or the colliding of our reality with a parallel universe. The phenomenon occurred in both Guangdong and Jiangxi, with some believing it was the beginning of an alien invasion. The images were caught on camera for the world to see and promptly went viral across the rest of the globe. So what on Earth or above Earth is going on? Well, even though it looks like a city in the clouds to you and me, apparently it is an optical illusion called Fata Morgana, which is a natural mirage. So that is what a lot of scientists are saying anyway, but other people are convinced it's a sign of a parallel universe or even a window to another world. Finally, coming into number 1, we have black holes. The theory of loop quantum gravity suggests that there is no point of singularity in a black hole, rather they're simply folds in the universe. Everything we know about quantum physics tells us that information is never lost, that energy can't be created or destroyed, so perhaps black holes don't suck and destroy, maybe they suck and create. A lot of scientists are dabbling with the idea that black holes are indeed folds or portals to an older part of the universe. Professor Stephen Hawking gave a lecture in 2015 wherein he discussed how it may be possible to come out of the other side of a black hole. He said the hole would need to be large, and if it was rotating, it might have a passage to another universe, but you couldn't come back to our universe. Anyone want to take that one-way trip? I don't know if I do.